Hello and welcome to another episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health. I'm your host, Todd Rennebaum. Welcome and thank you for listening or watching. I'm used to saying listening because I've been doing the audio podcast for so long. But anyway, speaking of the audio podcast, my friend Trash has been on there many times. And this is an episode with Trash. That's their name. And that's what they want to be called. So anyway, Trash has DID, or dissociative identity disorder, and along with histrionic personality disorder, schizotypal, ADHD, I believe, a bunch of stuff. Anyway, we talk in every episode that they come on, we talk about a different diagnosis, but this is the first time Trash came on and we talked about their DID. And it originally came out in August 2022. So, hey, hit like and subscribe and all that stuff, and keep listening and watching and enjoying my guests. But without further ado, I give you Trash. There's not much to research on you other than your TikTok videos, really. So,
yeah, we don't talk about too much that goes on just because, like, a lot of it could be triggering for others. And so we tend to kind of just post funny videos and just kind of the only things we really have is like our pinned video where it mentions our disorders, but even that doesn't go into much detail on how it is on the daily.
You clearly have a wonderful hair day.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I woke up not too long ago and I'm a little crusty right now because I still have the names on me, but it also kind of goes with the whole aesthetic, so I'm cool with it.
How did you get into that? The whole writing names down on yourself.
So my very first live, I was doing a makeup one. Also, the lingo is going to change a bit. Just know when we say we and like when we say I, it's just depending on who's out.
Okay.
But so it started with a makeup live, a very first live. Someone was like, hey, write my name. And so we pulled out the eyeliner and started writing it. And then more people were like, hey, write my name. And then we found out it was helpful. And our therapist actually saw progressment in our treatment from it. And so we were like, okay, this is something beneficial. And so it's been almost 5 months of doing it every night.
Huh. Oh, how is it beneficial? Do you know how, or it just happens to be beneficial and you're not sure how?
So it actually focuses on communication between our system, because we all have to talk to be like, this is the name we're doing. But that's also why sometimes we forget, because it's just us switching, and between each one we have like complete amnesia. And so we usually just have to go off of emotion, or if someone's good at communicating, they'll say the name.
Gotcha. So in your lives, have you switched? Is it personalities or people? How do you?
I like to consider them personalities or identities.
Okay.
Some people call them alters.
Okay. So in your lives, when you're doing that, is there a noticeable switch sometimes when
a lot of times they're very, very subtle.
Right. Okay.
Like that's the thing with more polyfragmented systems that I've noticed is with us, like, it will be very slight, but then if you take videos of each section, you could see the differences. And a lot of times it's just an eyebrow twitch or like an eye twitch, nose crinkle, our demeanor changes a little bit, and like posture and stuff.
Interesting. And so like some people, they have full other like identities, like this is Jason, he's a truck driver from 1940s or whatever, it's like very in-depth characters. Are your identities like that, or do you have names for them and you can number them, or is it more just kind of a blur? I don't know what I'm trying to say.
No, the video disappeared for a second, but it's kind of like so we actually have a book to kind of keep track, because a lot of them are fully developed and have their own like kind of what makes them different and who they are and how they are. And so we're a pretty massive system because traumatic events or high stress will create new ones. And with some situations, it has created several. The hardest part is understanding the memories that created some of them. But with what someone wrote down it's 9,805.
The year?
And they even have not per year, in general, like completely.
Well, that's how many identities you've had.
Yeah, that we
Gotcha.
have.
Okay.
A lot of them, like 7,092, are just partials, and so they don't really have a completely formed identity or how they are or anything. They're just kind of, I don't want to say there, but they're more underlying, doesn't really have much other than like a blur.
Gotcha. Is that normal to have that many?
The most that we've seen on record is like 5,000 and something. And so it's pretty intense, but it's also because our whole life we have only had 3 months without trauma. Before this year, we hadn't even had a month without it.
Really?
Yeah, because you're good.
So even just recently, you were still having traumas.
Yeah, we kept trying to make it a month without it, and then something would happen, and then something would happen, and then something would happen. Last year, our New Year's resolution was no trauma.
Well,
and stuff still happening. We were hoping so, because sometimes with trauma you crave chaos, and so you'll end up getting into these dangerous situations because that's what feels comfortable.
Gotcha.
And so this year we've been very isolated. Like, we only leave home probably like once a month, and we have a no touch rule where nobody can touch us, and so that's helped a lot with controlling the chaos, because also with our HPD, it kind of like histrionic personality disorder, it flares up where we tend to over-sexualize ourselves or be more seductive in character, which gives very mixed signals, where even though we don't want it, it keeps us protected, because then if they do try to like rape us, it's like, boom, they can't, because we're consenting physically, but not mentally.
So a lot of the trauma is sexual trauma.
A good amount of it, but then also a lot of it is from childhood and physical trauma, and also a lot of it was also sexual trauma. Like, before this year, this is the longest we've gone without physical touch. And so it's really nice, but identified so far, we have 516 with their like defined personalities, and only about like half we know the memories behind.
So where do you live with your parents, or are they part of the problem?
Oh, no. No, both of them are cut off.
Gotcha.
But we live with our roommate, which was originally our neighbor when we were still functioning. Then as more trauma progressed, we completely broke. We couldn't ask anymore. We couldn't act like a single person. And then with the amnesia, it made it hard to be a caregiver. And so we had to stop that. And then we realized, with not being able to really go outside because of having the trust issues with that, along with the chances of a little switching out or something and getting lost, because that started happening, it was like, okay, sometimes with it, since someone doesn't know what's going on, it's similar to like dementia patients, where like they're lost in their own little track of life and they don't know what's going on, and they just kind of do their own thing, sometimes sucked in the past, and then someone else will switch in and it will be like clarity.
This is, I mean, it's very interesting, but it's also very tragic because it is traumatic based, right? It's very trauma based. So So I'm sorry that all this trauma has happened to you, but at the same time, I'm glad that you do have DID because it's probably what saved you so far. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah, we're very grateful for it. Like, even though it makes life really hard, we understand that we wouldn't be able to smile and we probably wouldn't be alive with all that's happened
Mm.
because it's created different people. And I saw something where it said, like, each of the trauma, the only trauma you experience is the one that the alter is in at the moment. And so, with the identity being in, with only having like one or two traumas creating it, some of them have a consistent amount to kind of like store that amount of trauma, which does make it hard because they're basically just flashbacks when they're out. It's really nice because we're able to smile, we're able to laugh, we're able to have like this cool kind of quirky self that can make others happy instead of just constant suffering.
And you go by the name Trash.
Yeah, we all kind of go by that to make it a lot easier
Why
because
trash though? That sounds like such a negative word to
so
use.
that's our happiest altar. Like, they are one of the best hosts, and they just are, like, they are one who is formed from escaping a traumatic situation. So the ones that have been created from escaping it, it's like they see trauma as like a fuel where they're like, okay, this got me out of this situation. It has freed me. Like, yeah, it was traumatic, but it freed me. And a lot of them, so with how it works is a lot of times you end up picking something that is comfortable, safe at the moment, what your brain holds on to. So you don't really get to pick the names, like pick and choose and be like, this is this one. They kind of create their own name, they create their own identity. And that's why sometimes people have like fictives and ones that are from TV and stuff like that. And so with Trash, like they're pretty cool. They've been around for, I want to say, 4 or 5 years now.
Okay.
And they came out of escaping an abusive relationship. And at the time, what happened as they were being created is they were called Trash. And so they held on to that and it became very empowering.
Right, right. Okay. So it sounds negative, but it's actually a very empowering name that you've all decided to use.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's yeah, it's something where also, with since they're the happiest one, there's a chance of someone saying like, oh, hey, Trash, and it will pull up Trash in their whole team. So since we're polyfragmented, each host basically has their own little team or army where
Ah,
it uh, like alters personalities that are kind of created based around them that are kind of have attributes of them.
it's like Inception.
Somewhat, yeah. It's really nice because we have how many hosts? 72. And with the writing names, it actually merged some of them. And so it created it where they're able to function even more as a team. And so instead of having one team out at a time, it's like we have several. We keep a lot of this written down. I'm not sure if they wrote down how many are merged so far. I'm not seeing it though.
No, that's okay. So, who I'm speaking to right now? Are you the original uh, identity? I guess from birth
So we've actually subtly changed a few times during this. And
already.
that's also why we go by Trash, because it's easier than introducing ourselves every five
Can't even.
seconds or so.
Right, right. Huh. Interesting. So it is subtle because it's not like I've noticed. Like I've seen other interviews on YouTube and stuff where it's like they're a 5-year-old kid to a yeah, like a a man
Oh,
to a
we
woman
have
to,
those.
yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's mostly since they're divided in teams. And so there's a whole group of littles,
Mm,
and there's a whole group, there's multiple groups of men. And there's like quite a few like more feminine who have very like soft voices, especially baby. And then there's uh like the non-binary, and then there's also like kind of considered non-binary, but they're more like character type, and so they're kind of genderless.
interesting. Um, God damn it. So I'm waiting for an ADHD assessment. So I have to apologize constantly to people I'm interviewing because I'll load up about 3 questions in my brain and then I'll forget them. So
That's fair.
so usually when I'm editing the episodes, it's more for my sake than for my guests because I sound like a moron otherwise. So I apologize if I kind of go off track or if I forget what I was going to ask. But oh, I know what I was going to ask. Um, do so you have histrionic personality disorder. Does all your identities kind of have those symptoms?
Not necessarily. And it's the same with the schizotypal personality disorder and the borderline personality disorder, and
Mm,
even with the OCD.
really, that's fascinating. Actually, that that your brain can do that. Brain can actually fragment even disorders like personality disorders into different identities.
Yeah, there's some systems where even their vision and hearing fluctuates on who's out. It's surreal, but I it's like some are so defined that it creates this huge difference.
Hmm. Would you say Trash is kind of the leader host or just the favorite host?
They're the main one, and so we all just go by their name to make it easier.
Hmm.
But Trash was the first one who was stable.
Hmm.
And so we're working on stabilizing a few of the others as they merge along. But a lot of them were created out of like severe trauma that they couldn't escape. And so it made it very hard for them to kind of be like together and have communication, or because like even amongst teens they have a hard time communicating, like even as a group, unless they have the strong communicator. Like Trash has Fabio, who is basically a drag queen, and they're very chill because they spill all of the information and like passing of trauma as gossip. And so it's like, OMG, did you hear what happened to the body? So it's really nice because then it makes it so we're kind of separated from the trauma. And that's how they're also able to be so light and bubbly, because it's basically like juicy gossip being shared.
Hmm.
And then with Corpse, they have another one that's named Snitch. And so basically, the hard part about it is they don't snitch on themselves. And so whenever they're out, we don't know what's going on. But they'll just be like, oh, so and so did this, even if it's a good thing.
Ah, interesting. So you've changed a few times now, you said, and sometimes there's amnesia and sometimes there isn't, like because we're having a nice fluid conversation. So obviously there's some communication of what we've already communicated to keep the conversation going. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we have to communicate internally. That's why there will be little pauses in between, because the pauses are basically us switching and trying to figure out what the other person was trying to say. A lot of it's just pushing the buttons together, the
Hmm.
puzzle pieces together to kind of like figure out. And it's the same with the day and basic care and stuff. And so that's also why the lives help, because then we're writing on ourselves. And so we have to shower once a day at least. And so it will show that we haven't showered.
Interesting. I keep saying that. Interesting. But it is. It is. That's, I mean, I don't want to like sound like you're some kind of weird science experiment that I'm, yes, I see. But I'm just learning a lot and whatnot.
Yeah, they're more rare formed. And so, like, not necessarily too rare, like dissociative identity disorder affects like 3% of people. And histrionic is like the same percentage. The schizotypal, though, only affects 1%.
What is it called?
Schizotypal personality disorder.
I'm not too sure what that is.
So it's like a mild schizophrenia.
Okay.
So I don't necessarily hear voices or anything like that, but I do have severe delusions. And that's why my hair is always cut. Or not cut, well, kind of trimmed. And why it's always dyed.
I've heard of schizoaffective disorder. Is that similar?
Somewhat. That's actually what it kind of stemmed from, is my dad has it, and then his aunt had schizophrenia. And so it kind of takes that and genetically switched it. And it's honestly pretty cool, because then it doesn't affect like mood and stuff like that. It's hard though, because it still like messes with the delusions and stuff, because if our roots get too long, we think it's parasites and start ripping out chunks of our hair. And a lot of it was furthered by substance abuse. And so before we were able to just have little delusions, like we'd throw food on the floor because it is alive.
Right.
Just kind of.
It's not sushi, was it? It kind of is alive. Never mind.
Like, sorry. It was everything, like ravioli. We'd go to like, when we could afford it, we'd go to like a restaurant or something, and all of the food would be on the floor, or I'd start crying and have to apologize to it.
To the food.
Yes.
Okay. You know what? About 2 hours ago, I interviewed someone with schizophrenia. They also mentioned ravioli.
Oh, nice.
I'll have to Google ravioli and the meaning, if there's like a spirit guide meaning to ravioli. I don't know what I'm talking about.
We'll probably end up doing that as well. Because it also affects the spiritual side of things.
I suppose, so, yeah.
For the longest time, we thought we were a prophet and found out that wasn't normal.
Well, now you tell me. Oh, never mind. It's Todd, not God. That's my name. That's such a dad joke. Anyway. So who figured it out that you're not a prophet?
So when we started looking into the diagnosis and the DSM-5, like all of our DSM-5s, we match with flying colors. Like every single thing on the DSM-5 we match up with and have like a whole page of examples. And so
everything the DSM-5 holds, you have?
For each of the disorders.
Really?
So yeah, we match each of the things that it has attributed to it, like the delusions and the bodily hallucinations, and the flat effect is something that makes it hard, or inappropriate one.
The flat effect?
Yeah, and so that's where we thought we had depression for the longest time, because no matter what, we can't smile, no facial expressions, like we're very flat.
I see.
And then sometimes it's like inappropriate reaction, which is very bad in a lot of situations, because someone will be like, my mom just died, I'm not doing okay, and we'll start busting out hysterically laughing, and we're like, it's not funny, I swear.
Right. Awkward.
Yeah. Because then we just like can't stop laughing, and it seems like it's, kind of like we think it's hilarious, but it's not very comforting for them.
Right. Oh boy.
And then with
Well,
the histrionic, it's really nice. Like, it's not nice in some aspects, but it's nice with the mood because it makes you more animated. And it makes it so you're very kind of bubbly and dramatic. And so it's really nice because that's what we found a lot of people like, is they like it when you're basically performing while being yourself.
Sounds like my entire life.
Yeah.
When you were having substance abuse issues, was it every identity would have that issue too, or is it again like the OCD and stuff? Only certain identities would.
Well, how we see it is like with addiction, it kind of becomes everyone because of it running in the family, and like some wouldn't come out to indulge, but they still understand that if they did, they would just join and make it worse.
Right. Yeah, addiction's a bitch. I'm about 6 years sober now, so yeah, I hear that one. Have you been doing well with the substance abuse lately?
Oh yeah, no. I was about to say, like, we started smiling when you said 6 years because we've made it finally 6 years and 7 months.
Really?
We were very young when we were using. I don't know if it's chill to say it here, but we were using meth. And so that's where the schizotype got really hard. And we were only 15 through 16.
Okay. Yeah, you can say anything you want on here.
Okay.
So,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm just making sure.
Safe space. You could even swear.
That's why we try so hard for normalization.
Right, exactly.
Because that's why it's not really like talked about and stuff too much, because we want people to just see us as like a person or as people in a flesh suit and not make a big deal out of it. A lot of people end up putting their disorders on display, which I mean is cool for awareness, but it's also really hard to see because they expect everyone to kind of be that like defined, and like a lot of times it's a little bit exaggerated. And so it's like it becomes their whole self. Like all of our attributes other than our smile is basically personality disorders just taking over, because we're constantly switching through them and having different ones that peak more than others. So there's not a single point we're not struggling with the disorders. But it's really nice because with how they merged and stuff, we're able to kind of act like we're just very complex. When I mean, we are, but it's also not like, oh, yeah, this is this one. And, ooh, look at me. This is how I have it, Like we joke about being mentally ill and stuff, but we don't really be like, oh, this is all about me and this is how we are. We're just kind of like low key about it. Like sometimes we'll say we in our captions and stuff, and people will be like, oh, do you have this? And we're like, yeah. And then that's also why the pinned one shows our diagnosis, because a lot of people fake claim. And then we have all of those.
That was a question I was about to ask.
Yeah.
I don't know why someone would just fake having a severe mental illness.
It's because a lot of times in the media, when it's shown as a good thing or it's shown as quirky, people are like, oh, I want this. I want to act like I have this, because they're getting a lot of attention for talking about it all the time. And we want to get like noticed by how cool we are. I don't know what to call it, but like our talents are what we're able to achieve rather than what's like messed with our whole life.
Right. People are weird. It sounds well, those people that fake having severe mental illness, I guess, do have a mental illness in a way because it's like Munchausen or something. It's like they're, you know, I don't know if you know that term.
Not really.
So it's, Munchausen is people that like will live their life like they have cancer or something like that when they don't actually have cancer, or they and same thing they'll make it whole about their identity and look for sympathy and all this stuff, and because they think it's cool or something. So it's like it's a disorder within itself. So I guess people that fake having DID, I suppose, are actually have a disorder, but it's not DID. It's it's some other thing.
It's a lot of times it's OCD. So
Ah,
OCD isn't just compulsively cleaning or anything.
mm,
There's actually over 20 different subtypes. And there's some where you'll genuinely believe you have a medical disorder or a mental health disorder because you're constantly having those intrusive thoughts saying you are.
interesting. Again, you are very interesting, and you're very intellectual. What am I? No, not you're intelligent. You seem
Yeah,
to.
it helps with the OCD because then we compulsively research. And so it helps a lot because then we're able to kind of like pick up on information and understand kind of where it's coming from.
Hmm. So, have you had other negative kind of experiences with DID, like from people maybe not even online, but even in person?
So sometimes people will assume that it's a huge dramatic switch. And like I said, in videos, it's very noticeable. Um, Sometimes like when we're on Snapchat talking to someone, it'll be like, oh, and then also where it's kind of noticeable if you know what you're looking for is our present opening videos. Is we'll open a present and people will see all these different reactions and
Mm-hmm.
they're like, oh, and some of them will give hate and be like, oh, do people like that you're acting like a child? That's so weird. But it's us just giving the littles something they never got growing up.
Right. I actually did notice that in one of your gift things because you're like, oh yay, yay, and you're like clapping and stuff. And I was like, I wonder if that was a switch there. Um, so it's pretty fascinating because yeah, you get a lot of mail from, would you say fans?
Yeah, I call them tiny screen friends.
And they send you all types of stuff from like all types of gifts.
Yeah,
That's
they go through
amazing.
my wish list, and it's really nice because growing up, we grew up so poor where a lot of times for birthdays, it was a sorry I couldn't get you anything. And Christmas presents would be from donation places. And so our Christmas shopping was just going through these donation places and finding the one gift that we like. And yeah, and then with past relationships, we would go really hard because we just wanted to love and be loved, but they wouldn't get us anything.
Did you just
And they'd
switch?
actually, but what?
Did you just switch?
Probably.
Oh,
Sometimes
okay.
it's very subtle. But yeah, so a lot of times it's like we wouldn't get a lot and it would make it really hard, but like we just accepted it because we were like, if we complained, we were acting entitled, we were being over dramatic, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like of course they couldn't get me something for my birthday because why would I assume that? Like I'm the oldest out of seven. So why would I feel that when my little siblings have like birthdays around mine and they definitely deserve something because they're younger?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like sometimes it would be like an $8 foundation, which was really nice and it would make us really happy, or a t-shirt. And then like with having all of these people show that they care, it's really been breaking this core belief that we've had drilled into us that we don't deserve good things. And so now it's like, oh, people genuinely care. I guess we do deserve these things because they say we deserve it.
Absolutely, you do. Yeah. Where can people find your wish list? Is it on your
It's
TikTok?
yeah, it's in my link tree.
Oh, I see. Okay. I don't know what that
Yeah.
means. I'm too old. I don't know what
Oh, it's
I
like
see. It's like a link there. You just click the
yeah,
link.
it's
Okay.
the link has links to all these different places. The link tree is really nice because it will hold all of your different sites and everything. And so
Gotcha.
it has like my Instagram, or no, my Instagram is just the button, but it has like my Twitch. I don't really stream often, but we're gonna start doing that soon. But like our Twitch and our Spotify, so people can like find our music, and the Amazon wish list. And then we also have like our Cash App and PayPal and Venmo, which is really surprising how many people also gift through those.
Hmm. So is that how you make your living?
The lives are. The lives are
Okay.
the main one.
Because I'm old. I don't know what the hell anything is on anything, but I've been watching TikTok lives, and yeah, I see people get gifts and roses and whatever, and I have no idea what they're worth or how much money people can make just doing lives. I don't understand any of it, but um, so if you don't mind me asking about how much is your average you make, and I can edit this out if you want to. I'm just curious myself.
So I'd say anywhere from 20, and I think the most I made from one is 180. Uh,
Damn.
just for the hour, which is really nice because when we were a caregiver, we were making $6 an hour working 72 to 120 hours a week.
Oof. Do you want me to
And
edit that out, or do you care if it's in?
it's fine.
Okay. And then on top of that, you get gifts and other things.
Yeah, and so it's really nice because we started this off homeless and just doing our best, and we were devastated that we couldn't work. We couldn't do anything, and then it was really nice because now it's like we feel like we're doing something for it, we're actually working for it, and we feel like it really makes up for the 4.5 years we spent lifting over 350 pounds that many hours a week because we were taking care of 5 level 3 residents.
Hmm.
And that is the incompetence and highest level of care needed physically. And
Hmm.
so we were freaking ourselves. Like, we're seeing a chiropractor now, and they're like, I'm surprised you could walk
Wow.
because it destroyed our body. Like, we were taking care of people over 3 times our weight and sometimes having to deadlift them. Sometimes we were able to get the Hoyer and like roll them and get stuff under them and like lift them, but oftentimes that would take too much time. And a lot of times we were doing 2 people assist by ourselves. We felt strong and we had some muscle, but it also absolutely destroyed us because we also had to use different techniques because with the previous substance abuse, it actually got to the point where it ate at some of our muscles, it ate at all of our fat, and it absolutely started destroying our body. Like, it actually also started eating at our rib cage.
Oh,
Yeah.
the substance use or
The substance use.
wow.
And so it made it so after that, as we were trying to lift residents and stuff, we were using different muscles. We were having to use more than just like our body weight.
Right, right. Huh. So this must feel pretty amazing that you are like you're not just going somewhere providing a service and someone pays you and you go home. Like you are actually generating your own income just by being you.
Yeah.
That's
And like,
amazing.
it's nice because we help others with like, and so they'll be like, oh, you're inspiring, and we're like, oh, what? Like, we're just writing
Little
names
old
and
me.
talking. Yeah. And like, it also helps with the core belief that we thought we were unlovable. Like, we had so many people say, unless you're masked and people like don't see the true you will never be loved. Nobody will like you because you're so different.
And
But
you're
that's
proving the exact opposite is true.
And then also as a kid, we always wanted to be a famous artist. But then when we were working at the care home, they actually broke us down really bad mentally and along with physically and everything. And so they were like, all you'll ever be is an ass wiper. So you better stay here. Like
Yeah.
all you'll ever be is someone to take care of residents. Like you cannot succeed more. And then as we mentally broke, we were like, but we can't do anything. But then with this, like, we're not even in it for the income, but it's something that has saved us so much because it's like we're able to afford groceries. And I mean, with inflation, that's really nice.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing that that's happening. So I'm so glad that you're getting a lot of positive feedback. Would you say more positive feedback than negative? Must be.
Uh, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, good.
Sometimes it's hard because a lot of people will be like negative and stuff. But then we have to remember that a lot of people are just miserable and projecting.
That's
And
right.
so one of the rudest things we do though sometimes is someone will project and we'll be like, huh, projecting much? Is something not going well in your life? And we feel rude for doing that. But we're also that's our way of deflecting it.
Oh.
Oh, that was
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could be a lot more rude. So I think that's pretty good that you're doing that. Maybe it's planting seeds in their mind that, like, hey, wait a minute. Maybe I am reflecting and maybe I need help. Maybe she's the cool one and maybe she's the one that's healthy, quote unquote healthy, and I'm the one that has to cope with shit.
Oh, also we go by they them pronouns.
Right. Oh, did I say
Yeah.
she?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I knew
Oh,
that.
you're all good.
Okay.
It's very confusing, and a lot of people have to make the adjustment to it because it's not really like it wasn't as common as it's becoming.
Hmm. And is that a gender thing or because of um the ID?
So trash is non-binary. Quite a few are non-binary, but it's
Mm.
also because of the DID. Because then it's like, oh, you know, there's a lot of different people, and so that's only accounting for Einstein. You're on the book. How many? Okay, I can't find it because he
The
is brain
cat.
on the book. But there, I want to say like 801 females.
Mm.
And so with having all of these different personalities, it's like there is not as much females as there is for all the other ones combined.
Hmm. Can your identities have relationships with each other within like
Uh,
internally? Like I don't like that guy, or these ones are romantically involved, or you know what I mean?
oh, there is some conflict for sure. And that's what makes merging so hard because some of them won't trust others. And that's where it makes it hard with communication because they don't have that trust. And they're like, mm. Like Luna, I love her, but she doesn't believe anything Fabio says because of the way that like he expresses it. And then she doesn't trust anything Snitch says because, they're snitching.
Mm.
And she does not have a communicator in her team. And so she relies on no one. And that's where it makes it harder to remember things or like not necessarily remember, but communicate because then nobody's being like, hey, Luna, it's this, or they will. And she'll just be like, no, I'm
Mm.
going to do this completely opposite thing than what you were doing.
Right. Huh. Yeah, sounds like my kids. No, I'm
Yeah.
kidding. I'm kidding. Kids, if you're listening, I'm kidding. You know. So, do you have any contact with any family?
My little sister.
So,
Absolutely love her.
nice. Okay, good. So, out of seven siblings and parents, it's just the one sister you kind of have a relationship with.
Yeah, she's the second oldest, and so she was the one closest to me, and
Mm.
she saw a lot of what I've gone through. It breaks my heart that I don't talk with my other siblings, but it's mostly because they don't have like ways of reaching out.
Mm.
And we used to have Facebook, but we deleted it because it was too much for us. And then also our schizotype pal said that it was a form of mind control. So it made it kind of difficult to continue going on there. And so we feel bad though, because we do love them, but it's also harder talking to them because it's like our mom has improved, but a lot of the stuff in the past made it too hard to really, like, we forgive her because we understand like why, but the pain is too much to really like fully forgive her and let her back in. And so they'll praise her sometimes, and we're like, that's good for you. Because since we were the oldest, we got a lot of it. We got the most of it from like both her and my dad because we were able to handle it versus other siblings being that age. They're too young.
When you say you forgive her, do you mind me asking for what?
So she was heavily abusive, and so not as bad as our dad. Our dad, since he was struggling with addiction, he almost killed us a few times.
Mm.
But there were a lot of situations where we'd go through something very traumatic, and she'd back up the abuser. And like a lot of times, like I think our hardest point with her was a lot of reaction abuse, because when she realized a lot was wrong, she'd sometimes record us having a breakdown and laugh that she'd post it on Facebook, and so that all of our friends would see. And a lot of times, like there was one time like she held a knife to our throat because of fear of abandonment. And so I was like, that's when I told her I was feeling suicidal one time. And she's like, no, that's my choice to make, basically. And then sometimes she'd start laughing at me after an abusive thing happened. Like when I'd go through rape and stuff growing up from different people, when I'd get into dangerous situations, she'd be like, well, this is what happens when you walk outside. Because one time we were actually walking past a McDonald's and someone just dragged us into their home and left us on the side of the road. And so we walked home, and, you know, it was like, why are you late? Oh, maybe you shouldn't go walking, you know, by there. You should be completely alert all the time. And then also one of the hardest ones is just the fact that she didn't understand mental health. And so at 5, when this first started flaring up, where it was very noticeable, like with the dissociative identity disorder, we tried figuring out what was going wrong. And we were like, how does your brain work? And trying to figure out how to make it better. But instead of giving us help, she basically beat us and made us sit in front of these old psych ward horror movies where they were like dissecting people and they were electrocuting them, and said, that's what will happen if I talk about it. And so that's how we were able to mask for so long. Because before last year, we thought it was like illegal. But then when we went to the hospital, we were crying because we were like, hey, we don't care if y'all are going to dissect us, you know, or if you're going to hurt us, but we need help. And they were like, whoa, that wouldn't happen. This is what it's called, you know, like this isn't illegal. And we were like, wait, what?
Well, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. And I appreciate you being vulnerable and candid about it all.
Yeah.
Does your mother have some kind of, well, she must have some mental illness too.
Yeah, so she had a very, very traumatic background as well. And so the closest thing we could find to what it is sadistic narcissism. Because with the recording us and all of that, it was like constantly punishing us and trying to exploit us for bad things to kind of, because low self-esteem and stuff kind of projected. And with having all of that chaos growing up, it's just how her brain reacted to trauma. So it made it easier to forgive her. Like if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be able to forgive her, because thinking, oh, these were active decisions that she was making in the right mind is like, that's too much. But if it's like, oh, it's trauma-formed disorder, it just kind of is more harmful to others, then we're able to accept it, because it's like, okay, well, we have trauma-formed disorders. There was that chance, that we would have had like one like hers. And so like be accepting of it, versus then that's also where we were able to understand our dad a little bit more, but also where we have a huge resentment towards him. And but after he did a lot and we had like the flashbacks happen, we were like, no, we recently talked to our little sister about it, but he's the one who caused majority of our disorders, because histrionic is also potentially caused by trauma, more of sexual trauma. And so he did a lot when we were very young. And then
sexually.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it made it happen at a very young age. And so it made it very confusing growing up. The schizotypal is because of genetics from his side of the family. Dissociative identity disorder kind of got worse when he threw us against the phone, because before being able to count to 10, we knew 911 like the back of our hand, because our mom would sit there and practice with us every day, and we'd do little drills for what would happen if he tried killing the family again. So we, like, our sister's first memory too is us saving her, because what I'd do is I'd grab the kids, lock them in the bathroom and like the bedroom, and then I'd go in the bedroom and leave the door open for if mom needed to like run back in, and then I'd just like, pull out the phone and dial 911 and start talking to him. I had the address memorized and stuff, didn't know what the numbers meant. But I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. But that time he picked up both me and the phone and threw us against the wall, almost like killing us, definitely causing some sort of damage, but that ended up creating a different personality, and that's where it became noticeable. And so they thought it was quirky and imaginative at first, because it was called, so here's our dead name, but it was called Brianna Land. So we had all of these different characters, and sometimes like something would happen and they were like, why do you do this? And we'd be like, that wasn't us, it was this one. It wasn't us, it was Spot. And they'd be like, no, I'm tired of your excuses, with a whole bunch of swear words in between. And we'd just be like, oh, but it was them, I didn't do it.
Right. So your dad was, maybe, I'm assuming he, like, you're able to forgive your mom because she was mentally ill and had trauma in her life growing up too, and your dad not so much trauma growing up.
He had quite a bit,
Okay.
and we were able to understand that. Like, we were able to understand almost being killed. We were able to forgive
Right.
that. We were able to forgive so much, but when it came to the sexual stuff, that's where the line was crossed. That's where it was broken, and we were like, no, like we could not do it anymore. We could not accept it, and our therapist said that's okay, because a lot of times it is like the breaking point for people, and we're like, okay, but it also really has affected us a lot, and like it messes us up to think that we wouldn't be facing these disorders if it wasn't for all of the early abuse as like a child and a baby. Like, we were literally born early because of a gunshot. The stress put our mom into premature labor because a cop shot over at the seat right in front of her, because they went on a high-speed beer run with her in the back seat. And so even like in the womb and stuff, there was a lot of trauma. And then, throughout childhood, there was trauma. And then we moved out at 16. And like mom left dad before then, though, because it was hard, though, because he was like almost killing us every chance he got. And so she was like, I need to leave him, but I can't do this alone. So I'm going to need your help raising the children. And so I had to sacrifice myself to help raise them. And that's why sometimes I'll call them the kids, because the mentality switch. And so it was really hard because we had to raise them. We had to do all the cleaning. We had to do the cooking because she didn't really understand how to do a lot of that. And then if we were lagging behind on the cleaning, she'd get really mad and scream and throw things around. And then as a kid too, like if there was like our stuff on the floor, if we didn't pick that up, it was getting thrown away. I remember the feeling of our toys being thrown in the trash and then making us sit outside and watch all the neighborhood kids climb in the dumpster to pull them out and have them as their own.
Oh my God.
It really hit different.
I can imagine. Good Lord. Well, it's absolutely amazing that you're even functioning at all. So it's amazing that you are, you're like I said, are creating your own income. You're just by being yourself, and just you've come so far from that life. And now your younger sister that you talked to, she obviously has gone through a lot of this trauma as well. Her brain, I guess, has processed it differently. She doesn't have DID, or I'm assuming she's struggling with PTSD, but
oh yeah, but she doesn't struggle with DID or HPD because I was the oldest, so I was able to take it more. And so a lot of the stuff also happened slightly before she was born, or like after she was born. Our dad, I don't believe, touched her or anything like that. Because and so then also like with the DID, we had to keep her safe. That was our job. And so we'd save her and our other siblings, we'd lock them in the bathroom so they didn't have to see that. They didn't have to worry about that. When they'd be fighting, we would like sometimes try to like play music or sing to them, read them books, because that way they didn't have to go through it. Like, yeah, we had to go through it and like deal with like the blunt force of it. And even with our mom, because she chose us as like a best friend. And so if we didn't be her best friend and do a lot of the stuff and like take on all these responsibilities, we were the worst person ever. And so we got a lot of this stuff where it was like we were treated differently because we were the oldest. And so we did everything we could to keep them safe. Yeah, it messed us up, but it saved them.
So not only has the DID and the polyfragmenting saved your life, it was also a shield for the entire family. That's incredible.
Other than our mom, because our mom also would be the one almost getting killed. And that's how it works a lot of time with trauma. What I've noticed is it will be the oldest child and the mom, or, vice versa, where if the mom's highly abusive, it will be the dad and then oldest child, because it's like something in their mentality says, oh, they're the oldest, they can take it. The other ones are babies. But then as we're the oldest and as a baby, they're like, well, this is our first child, so it's okay. Or our parents' mentality was, you're too young to remember. But that's when a lot of these disorders are created.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because your brain doesn't understand what's going on.
Yeah, like you said, even in the womb, you can get trauma, let alone being 5.
Yeah. No, even before 5 is when we developed like the early signs of histrionic and the schizotypal. Because the schizotypal wasn't really trauma related, but like with the histrionic and stuff, it started around those times because it was our way of staying safe around the sexual trauma. Like we wouldn't necessarily over sexualize ourselves or have it as flared, but a lot of times we'd have the belief that pretty much all adults are pedophiles. And so we'd always be like on guard and kind of be like, they're going to try to do stuff to me, even if they're trying to be nice, especially if they were trying to be nice, because we were like, nope, that's not trustworthy. Mm-hmm. And then whenever something would happen, like a lot of our dad's friends from prison weren't good people. And so we'd still go through trauma. Like one of them, like some of the names is also blocked from the live. So we don't have to worry about having traumatic effect during the live. Every once in a while, we'll forget to block a name and then it will mess us up. Like one of them was Poppy, which is really hard because he was one who our mom didn't know. He was picking us up from school and stuff. And he'd always be like, oh, I'm not supposed to be here. And he'd end up giving us sleepy candy. And then we'd get the shit beat out of us because it was like, oh, you're missing your underwear. Where did it go? You can't lose that. Like, we have to keep buying you underwear. And the pieces didn't really come together for them. And so, like, that's where a lot of the resentment and anger lies, because they were obvious signs that they actively ignored and were like, oh, there's something wrong with you. And it wasn't like, oh, you're going through all of this trauma. We have to kind of connect the pieces. And so we had to like just accept that it was our fault when it wasn't.
Wow. Well, you are a warrior. It's amazing. And not just, I mean, and to see you like smiling and happy on your lives all the time. And it's, yeah, you're a miracle, really, is what you are.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff ended up like making our therapist cry and stuff, because like a lot of the stuff is, how we see it is, a lot of the stuff was stuff that doesn't usually happen to people. You know, a lot That's of right. the stuff is stuff that was like the worst side of
humanity.
People. And then now we made it to the good point that we never thought we'd get to, because all of these beautiful things that don't usually happen to people are happening. Like, you know, especially with like the presents and stuff, because a lot of times people don't just randomly get presents. And it's like all of these great things that don't usually happen are happening. And so we feel like life is about balance, and we've made it to the good times where things are just going to continue getting better.
I couldn't agree more. A balance, it's all life, the universe, everything is all about balance. So I'm glad that the scales are starting to tip the other way for you, and you're finding that balance. Yeah, it's I've a lot of people say bad things about social media, and I'm sure, and I know there is a lot of negative things. A lot of people can have their lives ruined because of it. But the last, well, not the last, but I've talked to a couple of people like yourself and someone else. There's an older gentleman that's on TikTok from Australia that I've talked to, that because of social media, it's actually been extremely positive for them in their mental health, because of the support and and just the random people, and also helping others through it, which then gives them, you know, satisfaction. And it's, so again, it's a balance, I guess.
Yeah, and it's really nice because also how we see it is with the way we help people is, you know, a lot of times, even if we're not talking about much, we get excited when we see routine ones pop up. Like if we see our tiny screen friends who have been there for a lot of the different lives, we get excited, and it makes them excited because it's like they're getting noticed. A lot of people don't take this time to notice the people like gifting or anything. They'll be like, oh, hey, thanks. But then we're just like, oh, hey, and we'll get excited.
Well, I was excited when you saw I was on your live the other night. You're like, oh, buddy hugs. And you wrote, I think it was on your leg or something you wrote. And I was like, So then I got excited. I was like, yeah, it's just good feelings all around. Yay.
Yeah, and so it's really
It's
nice
such a
because
simple
also,
thing.
yeah, and then also it's really nice because that was one of the highlights in dark times. Because as a kid, it created a personality, but we were known as jailbait. So when we were 14 through, I want to say 15 before getting into drug use, we were called jailbait. That was our nickname. We were cool with it though, because we would walk past the park and all these people would be like, yo, jailbait, hey. And it made us happy because we were noticed. We recently put the pieces together for that because we were like, oh, that's the feeling we put out, you know? Not saying like jailbait or anything, but like just being like, oh, hey, and getting excited because it was one of the highlights. Like a lot of our highlights weren't good,
Right.
but we considered them good.
Right. Huh. Well, that's amazing. And do you mind me asking how old you are now?
23.
23. Okay. You're like the third person I've interviewed that's like 23 recently. Weird.
It's just a number following you around.
Yeah, 23 in ravioli. After what's the connection here? What's the universe throwing at me here?
Also, though, with the age thing, a lot of our alters are different ages as well. Like, of course, the littles are young, but then there's also one corpse who is older than the rest of us, who is like 29. And so it makes it very confusing. And we have like an old man named Henry. And so it's just a mix of like different ages as well. And that's also where it makes it hard to get along. Unless one of them is supposed to take care of the littles, like Bob. Bob is one of our favorites, not gonna lie. He's like a clown, but
Bob the clown.
Yeah, and he just takes care of the littles, makes sure they're okay. Since he's a clown, he does all this goofy stuff to kind of keep them happy and make them feel safe in there. And so also that's why they don't pop out as often. Because they're having a blast out there and they're not having this weird fear that the body has gotten bigger.
Be sure to subscribe and to like this video. You can listen on Apple Podcast and Spotify. This is Todd Rennebaum saying, make your beds and take your meds. Keep watching for more interviews with incredible people telling their stories of resilience and adversity with mental health and mental illness.